This is Ask Joe, number 212. Hey everybody, welcome back to Ask Joe. Hopefully this episode's going to be a little smoother than the last one. I was rusty. I think I got the transitions down a little bit better. But thank you for listening. If you're listening to the audio version, there are video versions of these on YouTube. Check it out. And if you can ever make it 1 p.m. Central Time on Tuesdays, I'll be here streaming live on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/homestudiocorner. Would love for you to be there for that because we have a lot of fun. They're the ones who came up with the idea of doing Scott Stapp for the intro. By the way to go Scott Stapp for just embracing it and going for it. He's the man. But one final announcement. If you don't already subscribe to the Home Studio Corner Joe Gilder live calendar, you need to, because it's got every Tuesday, it's marked in there. It'll notify you. It'll show up on your phone. It's pretty dope. Go to homestudiocorner.com/calendar. If you previously subscribed, you might need to resubscribe. You do need to resubscribe because it is no longer working the old one. This is a new one that I've worked out some kinks. So I want to talk about today. It's Tuesday, November 28th. And tomorrow and the next day, so Wednesday, Thursday, I've got a 2-day session with a fabulous duo called Homestead Collective. They are, if you are familiar with the band Sunday Muse, you may recall that name, nodding your head, yes. They were the band that we used in we actually mixed one of their songs in Dueling Mixes, and then we mixed another one of their songs for Mix Together, which is a YouTube series on my channel where you get the tracks and you can mix the song along with me, and I go step by step through the whole thing, and it's free, and it's dope, and the song is amazing. Well, that's a band called Sunday Muse, and then Caitlin, the lead singer, and Ben, the guitar player, started a little acoustic duo called Homestead Collective, and I reached out to them, said, hey, let's do an acoustic EP. Like a Christmas acoustic EP, because it's almost December. And they said, yes, we're in. So we booked the session, and they are coming down. They're driving down today, actually. Maybe even watching right now. Hi, Ben and Caitlin. But they'll be here tonight, and we'll be doing just 2 full days in the studio, and then maybe a bonus half day of me doing mixing tweaks. But the idea is to just get in here, set up all the instruments. Ben's bringing a bunch of instruments, and just make music. They've got their songs picked out, and it's going to be fun. But the goal is, if we can, get it all recorded and mixed in 2 days. Is that possible? I don't know, but it's going to be fun to try. And I've mixed their stuff before, but I've never recorded them. Ben is here. Ben Morris. Here, you're probably like driving down the road listening to this. That's pretty dope. So in this brief little soliloquy at the beginning of the episode, I want to talk a little bit about what I do to prepare for sessions like this. While I love recording my own music, and Ben was actually in the room when I recorded all the guitars for my acoustic EP earlier this year, while I love doing that, and yes, I'll feature some of this on my in 2 episodes of Gildercam. Recording with other people is super fun, because you've got to book the session and schedule the time, and you can't just do it when you want to. With my own stuff, I can just come down here in the morning, at night, in the afternoon, and just kind of put some work in on the project whenever I want to. And it's a little bit harder to get that set schedule like you do when, for example, the band is from Pennsylvania and they're driving to Nashville, so you can't just wing it. You got to actually get stuff done. Plus, it's always great when there are more people in the room and just creating and coming up with something cool. So I'm really excited about that. I want to go through a few things just in preparation for the session, especially if you're in a little bit of a time crunch and you want to make sure you're just hit the ground running making music. Thing number 1, you need to have heard the songs before the session begins. While you can certainly get by with them showing up and just strumming a tune and you figure it out from there, there's a lot of time that goes into setting it up, right? Picking the tempo, charting the song for the musicians to play along to so everyone's on the same page. You can have them just sit and play to a click and then just hope that they memorize where all the parts are. But if you're making changes to the song, or if it's one of those, they're a bunch of Christmas covers that I'm guessing Ben and Caitlin haven't played tons, so it's probably not super memorized in their heads. I'd rather not have all that time where you're stopping and starting saying, okay, where am I in the song? What comes next? What's the next section? Having a song chart makes life infinitely better. But it takes time to do that. So one of the preparation things I'm doing, I had them send me MP3s of them playing the songs and their arrangements. I had a couple of pieces of feedback on, I think one, the rest sound great already. So it should be really easy to do. But I'm going to sit down tonight, probably here in the studio, and write out a number chart for the songs. Just if nothing, even if they don't look at it, if Ben's like, I've got this, I don't need to see your stinking chart, I'll have the chart in front of me and I can make notes, we can make arrangement changes and do all that. So I'll chart the song as they played it, and then we can move things around and change things on the fly, but we're all on the same page with the same chart, which makes life a lot easier. Second thing I'm going to do, and I may not get to this because I've got so much to do today, but is to go ahead and prep the session, or prep the actual Studio One, Pro Tools, whatever DAW you're using. Go ahead and prep that session and get all your inputs and track set up. I don't like to have tons of pre-baked tracks, but to have a vocal track with the right preamp already assigned to that channel, an acoustic guitar track, and maybe that's it. And then I just duplicate those as I need them. I don't foresee us doing a lot of live tracking, but that might be an option. So it's nice to at least make sure my I/O settings are set up, make sure especially in this new studio, that my preamp is showing up on the right channel on the board. Another big thing is setting up the headphones. I've got a couple headphone jacks here at the desk. We're going to probably record in this room, but I need to find ways to get headphone mixes out to them. So I've got a headphone amp. Figuring out cabling and adapters and to get that out to where it needs to be is something that you just don't want to be scrambling to do as they're walking through the door for the session. So that's another thing I've got to do today. I'm probably going to have them record either here, just to my left, which is there's a closet there, but I'm going to put some treatment up and then kind of make it kind of walled off as a little bit of a booth, just so he can go on the other side of that gobo and play, and then do vocals, just kind of find a good spot to do vocals in the room. But we're going to get heavy use out of my gobos, wheeling those around. This room is actually fairly dead. It's not super dead, but it's not super lively, which is great. With a couple gobos around, we should be able to get nice, tight recordings and then be able to, Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. We should be able to get nice, tight recordings for this acoustic project, and it should be great. If they both want to play and either play and sing together at the same time, or both play guitar to lay something down and have that cool moment, I'm all for that as well. I can set them up on opposite sides of the room with a gobo. Bleed should be minimal, and it'll be fun too. What else from a preparation standpoint? Always have coffee on hand. I need to get some more coffee. And I think those are the main things. The biggest thing is to communicate beforehand, getting about the music, about payment, about schedule, all that stuff. I'm not a super great communicator, but I try to reach out before the session, let them know what time to be here. They're going to show up tonight to drop off their equipment. And also getting those songs ahead of time, giving them time to get the recording to me so I can listen through, so I can be familiar with them. So as I'm producing, I know what I'm going into. I feel a lot more comfortable and confident when I know the song going in versus when I've never heard it before and I've got to just kind of wing it. And I'm listening, and if I wait till then and I'm winging it, he might sit down, start playing the song, and I'm so concerned with making sure we've got good levels, good acoustic guitar tone, that the click's working, the headphone mixes are good. I'm probably not listening terribly critically to the actual song itself. And they may get guitar, a couple of vocal tracks down, and then I suddenly realize, oh, this would have been great if we had taken out that first chorus and gone straight into verse 2 and then doubled that bridge at the end, and all those changes that you can make in the software, but it's so time consuming and it's kind of lame. It's much better to, what is it, class? Get it right at the source, and then you don't have to do all the editing after the fact. Anytime you have to fix it in the computer, it's just not a good day, right? Thanks for agreeing with me. Okay, what else? Finally, this is something, and if you're a VIP member, then you know a little more about this, but I gave my Vipers a challenge this month to go out and book a paying gig, meaning book something where someone's paying you to do something related to music, whether it's running live sound or playing a show or having someone come in your studio. And I want to encourage you just to put a little bug in your ear. One, you should be a VIP member because it's super fun and awesome. But number two, be thinking about somebody you can approach and say, hey, let's do a project together. I did this with Caitlin and Ben. I said, hey, we've talked about working together for a long time. I said, what about an acoustic EP? That gives it a time limit. We got to do it soon. And I said, come on down. I really want to make music with you. And it worked out. Who can you do that with? And it might work out for you. Boom. I operated a lot better when there wasn't that much lead into the boom. My booms are just, I give it a 3. 3 out of 10. That might have been slightly better than last week's boom. No, Quinn Bizzle, I did not nail the boom. You were blinded by the bright sunlight behind me. I certainly did not nail the boom, but you're kind anyway. Okay, let's jump into your questions. If you have questions about my session that I'm setting up, questions about the studio that is just about finished setting up, I even rearranged the couple things in my rack. I brought the central station down, got rid of the remote so I can just reach over there. It's one less thing to clutter up my desk. Put the 11 rack up a little higher and took that silly Alesis 3630 out of the rack entirely because I literally never use it. So there you go. That's one change. I was thinking about running cables through the ceiling earlier today. I'm not going to do that because that's just going to be a waste of time. Might be cool later. But if you have any questions about this or just about what you're working on, I'd love to talk more about you than me. I know that might be hard for you to believe sometimes. I'd love to hear what you're working on and any problems you've run into, any questions you have, if you need any advice, or if you want to talk about business stuff. I find that terribly fascinating. Would love to rap with you about that as well. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Paul says, have you been experimenting in the new room? I've really just been setting it up. So we left town for Thanksgiving, so I've only had a handful of days in here. Just getting things wired, getting the wiring situation a little nicer because if you may remember, my desk has always been up against a wall. Now it's kind of out in the room, which means I can't have it be a total mess back behind there. So they got to kind of make that cleaner, which makes me feel a lot less stressed. And also just thinking through workflow, since I'm going to probably be recording in this room for the most part, figuring out like how to run cables without tripping over them. But no, I haven't done any audio experimenting here. I've listened to a fair amount of music on my speakers in this room, and as you might imagine, and is fairly predictable, it sounds different. There's not a ton of low end when I'm sitting in the mix position. There's a ton when I sit over there at that desk in the corner, of course, but I've got to figure that out too. But I have several friends who've reached out to want to help me with some of the acoustic treatment side of things, which I'm sure I will tell you all about. I've got good friends. A company I used to work for actually represents Prosoacoustic, which they've got some really cool looking panels and gobos and things that I might be using to augment things. And then one guy from, GIK Acoustics? GK? I'm sorry, I should know what your abbreviation are. He reached out, super nice guy as well. They were saying put some insulation up here above the ceiling tiles, which will help a lot, which I totally believe because 2 studios back I had that, and it did seem to help quite a bit. John Anderson says, Joe, what do you use the 11 rack for? Good question. I haven't used it a lot since I got my Fender Deluxe Reverb amp, but it is a great... So the amp modeling systems have become so good. When we do those, you saw the last couple of episodes back of GilderCam, Jason Roller, who is a top, best guitar player I've ever heard, lead guitarist, he plays through a Kemper. Right? And then the 11 racks I think still sound great too. Probably not as good as the Kemper, but they're great. For me, it's just different tones. I'm probably not going to go out and buy a Marshall half stack and an old vintage Tweed Fender amp and a Mesa Boogie and a blah, blah, blah. Maybe I will, maybe I should. But in the meantime, $300 used, I got the 11 rack and it gives me lots of different tones. Does it sound just like the amps? Probably not, but it's different. And that's what's cool. If you go listen to my album Better This Way, and especially the EP called Free, I think all the guitars on Free and a lot of the guitars on Better This Way were done through the 11 rack. So through the amps there, most likely probably the Vox amps and the Fenders for the most part. Maybe a couple of Marshalls in there as well. It's just great to give different tones. I was watching That Pedal Show. If you're not familiar with That Pedal Show and you're a guitar player, you should check them out. They talk about pedals and amps all day, but they were talking about how they love their guitars, but they have way more amps. They own way more amps than they do guitars. Now, they don't ever talk about 11 rack or Kempers and things like that. They like real pedals and real amps, but they were talking about how while guitars are great, the amps give such different ranges of tone, and then add pedals on top of that. It's pretty cool. So I use the 11 rack for that. I also have it wired up. I finally have it wired up where I can send a stereo send from my board to the 11 rack to the line inputs and record that back in. So for reamping, which I don't do any of that really, but if I want to take like a vocal or a drum track and run it through an amp or run it through some sort of cool distortion effect on the 11 rack, I can. So it's kind of like the people who like to run something through their pedal board. Doing that is fun, but you get ground loop issues sometimes, and you technically need to use a reamp box, and you have to get your pedal board out, which mine's over in the closet somewhere, poor thing. So it's kind of a nice, simple solution with this rack mount 11 rack. I can just run it, send it to that output, record it back in, just to try things out. Not to say it's not worth getting out your pedal board and running things through that as well. That reminds me, I'll probably do that for this session this week. Have the pedal board out to the side, plugged in and wired up. So if I want to run anything I like that idea. Ben Morris, we're doing that. We're going to run something through my pedal board. Ben, by the way, even though it's acoustic EP, that dude is a sick electric player. Golly, yeah. Super, super sick. Not sick like sickly, but sick in the good way. Simon Carlsdad's here. Ben Holmes is here. Life is good. Casper says, business question. I want to mix for clients and, I want to mix for clients and have some, but it's hard to find clients. Musicians groups on Facebook are mostly for people trying to form bands, so they aren't currently ready for it. It's a great question. So I'm assuming the underlying question is how to go find people to work with or people who are ready for what you do. The reality is you need to make connections with people today that will lead to a gig for you in 2 years. So if that bums you out, that's kind of the way life works. Now, you may find somebody who just, the stars have aligned and they are looking for a mix engineer and they meet you and you're mixing their stuff within the week. That can totally happen as well. So, of course, you need to still be out there and looking for that kind of low-hanging fruit. But for me, a lot of the client work that I do comes from relationships that I've had probably for quite a long time. And through just continuing to have relationships, then you earn the opportunity, you earn the ability to ask, but then also you tend to attract people coming to you asking to do stuff as well. So I think it's really just a relationship thing. You can go into the world of Facebook ads and Craigslist posts and things like that and probably get some success there. But everyone I know who has had any sort of success music-wise, you start asking them their story, and what do you notice? It annoys me sometimes when I watch interviews, but they'll start naming names. Not like name-dropping. They'll say, well, I grew up with this guy who worked at this place and got a job here, and he got me in to meet this person who then booked me to play this gig, which led me... it's all this, serendipity and right place, right time, knowing the right people, but it's just relationships. So for some people, that's an easy one. If you're like me and you tend to be a little more isolated, a little more introverted, that's probably one of the biggest struggles. So find ways to create value. So that's the first thing, is to pursue relationships. And don't be the guy who's just pursuing a relationship and it's so obvious that you're doing it just to get a gig. Do it because just to be a good dude, right? To just have good relationships, because you may have some people, most of your relationships probably won't make you any money. You might have some people that you connect this person with this person and they might do a gig together, but you might not get anything from that. It's just good practice and it will come back to you. It almost always does. And sometimes it doesn't. So I'm not going to go and say it always comes back to you. That wasn't true. But it can't hurt to just be a good guy and to connect people. The second half of that equation, or the second side of that coin, is make yourself valuable. If you're not very good, go get better. If you are really good, you have to find ways to demonstrate that for people. It's easier than ever to demonstrate your expertise with things like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You don't have to have a home studio corner site per se, but there are so many artists that, like Foo Fighters, for example. I don't love Dave Grohl's voice. He's great. I hear his voice. I'm like, I wish his voice was different. But the reason I like Foo Fighters so much is because he's done such interesting things and created. I've never even been to a Foo Fighters show, right? I think they're coming to Nashville in the spring, but good night, the tickets are expensive. And I may go anyway. But he's created like Sound City, the documentary about that studio. That TV series they did for Sonic Highways. It's all super interesting. It's not a tutorial. I didn't really have to pay for them. I guess I bought the TV series on Amazon, and I guess I bought Sound City as well. But it's nominal, right? It's $10, $20 he's gotten out of me over his career, but he's created such value. And I talk about him a lot on this podcast and other places because I just like what they're doing, and it's interesting to me, and it keeps me engaged and keeps me wanting to listen to their next record and find out. So their latest record, Concrete and Gold, I could just listen to it and be like, that's cool, but then I go watch a couple videos where they do interviews and they talk about how Paul McCartney played drums on one of the songs and how one of the guys from Boyz II Men did background vocals on another song, and suddenly I'm invested in the music and I want to listen to it over and over. I'm more likely to share it. I'm more likely to maybe buy a deluxe version if they release it. Probably not, I won't do that. But I might go to their show next time they're in town. That's the kind of thing. He's creating value. So how can you, with no strings attached, do things that are valuable for people, whether it's entertaining, informative, or just, I guess those are the two, entertaining or informative or funny or whatever. Just what can you do in the internet space to become more valuable so that people start seeking you out? I never started Home Studio Corner with the idea of getting clients from it. I just thought I'd have an outlet to make some stuff and maybe I'd sell an ebook one day. And I've gotten so many clients over the years, whether it's just mixing something or recording something, which doesn't make sense. You'd think, okay, I'm teaching recording and mixing. Why would anyone hire me? The people who are my audience are the ones trying to get better and do it themselves. I thought that too, but as it turns out, there are people who they'll email me and say, hey, I'm getting better at mixing. I'm not quite where I want to be, but I want to release this song. Can you mix it for me? And I say, sure thing. So a lot of that has come and I wasn't expecting it, and that's how it's panned out, which is super cool. Simon says, you never thought you'd have people fly all the way from Europe to hang out with you. This is true. Simon Carlstead is on a short list of people who attend these Ask Joe lives that I've met in person. Nadeem Merchant's another one. That might be it. The world is so small, and I love it. Simon, I was at your store over the weekend, IKEA. Thank you for making cheap, easy to assemble furniture. Martin King says, what are the pros and cons of guitar effects pedals versus adding effects in the DAW? I think adding effects in the DAW is fine, but I much prefer... Oh, Brian Burnham's here on the live thing. We've met in person once or twice. Anyway, I much prefer to get the effects on the way in. That's just what I like, that commitment. I like to make it sound like I want it to sound on recording day, not on mixing day. The one exception is if I want to really... Well, two exceptions. If there's a sound that I want that I don't have a pedal for, then yeah, I'll use a plugin for that. Or if I want like a very on the grid delay sound, and I think I could get it better with a plugin than with my pedal, I'll do that. Or if I think my playing is a little off timing wise, I'd rather go in the software and kind of tighten up that performance and then add the delay onto the tighter performance. Then those are situations where I'll do that. But that's only a handful of times. Or if occasionally we're like, we want delay, we're not sure if we want a quarter note delay or a dotted eighth note delay, my suggestion would be decide and commit to it. But if you just can't decide, you can always add the delay later. But delay is about the only thing I might add later, because you may not think of it, but once you record everything else, you realize, oh, that would be great with delay. You add it on, life is good again. So that's my take on it. If you save everything for later, you're just going to have more work later. And we already struggle, most of us, with finishing things in a timely manner. If you start putting off all your creative decisions to make those creative decisions later, you're just essentially ensuring that you will never finish, which we don't want that, right? Bill says, I want to build my own gobo. What material would you suggest for the filler and the exterior material? Bill, go Google that. There are thousands of articles about it, and it seems like the Owens Corning 703 fiberglass insulation is what a lot of people use, and then the fabric on the outside needs to be breathable. So if it's too thick, it'll actually be reflective, so I'm told. So it needs to be a little bit breathable so the sound actually goes in and gets absorbed. Ben Holmes, any tips for recording shaker or tambourine? No matter which mic I use, they always sound really sharp, edgy, and brittle. Ribbon mics. I've gotten that little Cascade Fathead. It sounds awful on so many things, but on percussion and on guitar amps, it is spot on. And they're cheap. I think $130, $160 maybe. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not like a Royer. Super, super great. Dynamic mic. If you don't have a ribbon, use a dynamic. Back away from the mic. Also, just turn the preamp down. Your shaker track doesn't need to be huge waveform. A lot of times it sounds harsh just because it's so stinking loud. Can someone explain to me what music is? No, I cannot. That is that's an existential question. Dovey says, a church in town has a drive-by Christmas presentation where you drive around different Christmas scenes. I'm recording their CD that you play in your car explaining each scenes of the Christmas story. That's super cool. Way to go. What a creative. There's so many creative like studio gigs out there that you may not initially think of, and you may not even think it was something you want to do, but you may find it's still super creative and super fulfilling. I love that. Quinn says, I'm terrible about procrastination. What was that law that you and Graham talked about where the time you allot to something is exactly how long it will take? It's called Parkinson's Law, and it basically means the time you allot to what you just said, the time you allot for a task will expand. You'll take as long as you give the task. If you give yourself 3 hours to do something, you'll take all the 3 hours 9 times out of 10. That's why I like deadlines are good, especially like if you're going to sit down and work on something. It's a great idea to say, I'll be done with this by this time. It just puts that little bit of pressure to kind of keep the ball moving instead of just kind of goofing around. I am great at this sometimes and horrible at it other times, so don't think I've got this figured out. But, we're all works in progress, aren't we? There's a shadow from the light on my microphone that's making my mouth look funny. Okay. Pete says, hey, Joe, what's the mic you use on your camera for Ask Joe? Your audio always sounds really good. Thanks, Pete. Pete, I use it's the Rode mic. There's a couple different ones. It's the one that's like $150, made by Rode, RODE microphones. It attaches to the shoe mount thing, plugs into the side. It's got its own. I don't do anything to the audio for like all the Gilder Cam. That's just what it sounds like. So I believe either the microphone or the input on my camera has a limiter on it, and I dig it. So I just leave it alone. Bill McDonald says, do you finally get a patch bay? No, the only thing I did get, so there was a video I did a while back where I showed how I used just a regular like stage snake as kind of a patch bay. So I would plug the stage snake into my preamps and then label the stage snake. So if I want to go into my ADL 700, I can just plug into that channel on the snake. Also, I can drag the snake over there, so I'm not having to run 3 cables to get over here to the back of the preamp, which isn't super fun, and it's a little cleaner looking than having a bunch of cables coming out of the back of your rack plugged into all your preamps. Since then, I've upgraded to, I can't remove this camera to show you, but the ART makes Graham Cochran has this in his studio, and I thought it was great, so I stole it. Didn't steal his. I stole the idea. I got my own. ART makes a single rack mount box that's just 16 XLR inputs, and on the back of it is 16 XLR outputs. So I run those into the back of my preamps and into the preamps on my board. So then if I want to plug anything in, and actually just yesterday I got out my label maker, nerd alert, got out I own a label maker, and then I got it out, and I labeled my preamps on there. So the ADL 700, ADL 600, and the Eureka, I put labels on there. So if I want to go into those, I plug into there. They're labeled on my mixer as well, on the little scribble strip on this new Studio Live, and then I've got them labeled in my DAW. So it's kind of nice to have everything labeled and I know where everything is. So no, I don't use a snake anymore. If I needed to record drums in that other room, I would still use the snake for that. Otherwise, for this session this week, we're probably just going to run cables around the room. If I need a little longer cable, I'll just put 2 together and it'll be fine. But no, I don't think patch bay makes a lot of sense in my situation. I've got 4 channels of external preamps and no external anything else. I'm never needing to patch anything. I'm not mixing and running it out to hardware. I just don't see the need for it. I love patch bays, but I don't need them. Did you master your own EP? Yeah, all the EPs I did this year, I mastered myself. Is that a bad idea? Ask Ian Shepherd. I don't know. It probably is. But it's just gotten to where I'm up against the deadline, and it's time to be done. And I don't have time to send off and then get back from mastering engineer. And I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm not great, but I'm okay. Joel Polanco says, hi, Joe. Have you ever had USB interface noise, like radio signal noise? It's just pulsing static. I can't get clean recordings. Yes, I hate USB, or up until recently, this mixer's USB. But even on this mixer, I wonder if you use a cheaper USB cable, if that causes some of the problems. If it somehow picks up some interference, I don't know. That might be silly. But try to get a better USB cable or get better power. That might help. It could be as simple as get your phone off and away from the stuff you're recording. That can happen as well. I was in Steve Peffer's studio 2 weeks ago, and my phone, even though it was on, I think it was on Do Not Disturb, it must be getting a message or something, and it picked up by the tube mic, the $1,300 tube mic I was playing into, picked it up and we had to re-record the track. So it even happens in nice studios. But yeah, I know how frustrating that can be. And laptops tend to do it, I think, a little bit more. I don't know if it's because everything's kind of together. I don't know. But get your phone away from it. Get a better cable. Those might solve it. Sorry. Johnny Fuller, what's up, Johnny? Says, I think I accidentally installed some of the sound sets on my drive. Can I just move the ones that are on? I have no idea what you're talking about. Good luck. I don't even know what you mean by sound sets. Sonic Solution says, a better solution is to buy an XLR panel with solder cups, hardwire it to your Snake, and avoid all the Chinese parts of the ART patch bay. Worth the extra work. I'm sure it is better, but this is an interesting point. Sonic Solution isn't wrong that a better patch bay would be quote-unquote better. But it legit would probably be better. But just because it's better doesn't mean I need to do it. I have that Fender Deluxe Reverb amp. I love that amp. It sounds great. There are better amps out there. Does that mean that I'm incapable of making good recordings on that amp? No. Right? I think it's so easy to get caught in that trap of, yes, there are better solutions than ART. I don't know how to solder, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on it. And so far, when I record stuff, it sounds amazing to me. I don't think changing out my patch bay for something better would give me a noticeable improvement. And if it did, it would be a nominal difference. Whereas I'd rather buy a new microphone with that money that will give me a crazy cool different sound, or buy a new guitar that'll give me all these new tones that I've never had before, or a completely new instrument, or a new keyboard patch, for my main stage rig so I can have new sounds for recording. All of that makes a huge difference. No one's ever gone from, man, I've never won a Grammy to, hey, I won a Grammy because they switched out their patch bay cables, right? And I'm not dogging on you. You're completely right. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Johnny Lennox says, hey, Joe, just wondering, how have you found the PreSonus rack mount mixer you got for your church? How do you think it will work as an interface? Well, we've only used it once, and it worked well, except right towards the end of the service, the iPad lost communication with it, and apparently my voice wasn't coming out the mains. So I showed him how to kind of re-scan for the device and get it back up. He just didn't know how to do that, and it was fine. So that was a little disappointing, but otherwise it worked flawlessly. As an interface, I wouldn't love it because it's not super fun to mix on that app. It has all the channels on there. Even if you don't need all the channels, they're there, and you got to kind of swipe through them to get to where you want to get. And having to have the iPad there and on all the time, to me, I just wouldn't like that in the studio. But I'm assuming, I haven't compared the two, I assume it's a lot cheaper to get the rack mount than to get a full rig. And if you're going out and doing a lot of live recording and wanting to bring it back in the studio, I could see how that would be pretty cool to be able to just keep it in a case, a rack case, and take it in and out pretty easily. So I think it's certainly doable. Everything's on the laptop or on the iPad, which is not bad. It's just different, Johnny says, this is a follow-up from his earlier question. I moved to Studio One, and I think I installed some of the sound sets on the C drive. I want them to be installed on a separate drive. Just want to know if I can move them. I have no idea. You might be able to, but you might not. I think they might. Some of that stuff might just default to the system drive. So unless you're having problems with it, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Unless it starts to not work well. I've not used any of the sound sets. It probably makes me a bad PreSonus person, but I just like to record stuff. I don't like to get in there and poke around patches and stuff. It's just me. That's just me. Nothing wrong with it. Anderson Bryan says, yes, you can. Thanks, Anderson. Quinn says, I prefer Thunderbolt personally, but I'm running a MacBook Pro and only have 2 ports, and I can daisy chain Thunderbolt, and it makes a huge difference for me. Yeah, Thunderbolt is cool. I hear it super fast. The new Thunderbolt PreSonus interface, I hear, is apparently insane. Very, very cool. Any advice for returning to live performing after many years? Practice a lot. And practice, the thing I found is I could play a show and I could rehearse in my room. I could do that every day for a year. And I would get better, but I might not get super better. The thing that I found that makes me super better, and it takes more time and work, is to record myself rehearsing and then listen back. You know how, like, you listen back to a show while you were playing the show, you thought, I am the best thing that has ever graced a stage. And then you listen to the recording and you realize, oh, I'm kind of just normal or average, or wow, my pitch was off, or wow, my guitar timing is really bad, or all those things. It's not a fun thing to hear, but if you don't, the thing is, you don't realize it's happening. So the only way to fix something is to know it's a problem. The only way to know it's a problem is to listen to the recording. Now, some people, you can get to a level where you can notice all that stuff as you're playing it, and you can make mental notes and you go and work on that and fix it later. But if you're like me, that's not something that's super easy to do. So you end up needing to listen to the recording, focus on the problems, go practice those problems, record it again. Now, you can record your shows, which is great, or just record yourself rehearsing. I've done all of the above, and it's super helpful. Bill needs a link to my VIP program. It is homestudiocorner.com/VIP. As of this shooting, that's not a good word to use. As of shooting this video, shouldn't say shooting. As of today in November 2017, it's only $10 a month. Can't foresee it going up. So you should join. Simon Carlstead says, just get out and play. I did my first concert as a singer last week. It was a lot of fun, but man, do I have to practice a lot. And that's good, right? You may think, oh, if I listen to the recording and I sound bad, I'm going to feel bad about myself. That might be true, but wouldn't you like to know where your areas of weakness are, or the places you need to work on? It's way better than being that person who thinks they're amazing and gets on American Idol and then realizes when the judge tells them they're awful, it's the first time they've ever heard that there's anything wrong with their voice. Yeah, that's not super cool. And I would even go so far as to say, hey, I'm recording 2 tracks. Double the information. I would venture to say it's not super loving on the part of their friends and family who let them go that far. No, don't be a dream crusher, but man, if the person's tone deaf, they should probably know that before they get to wherever they get. Okay. Simon, congratulations, by the way, on your first singing gig. That is so cool. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, I got time for maybe a handful more questions before we try to do this outro music and see if I don't botch it again this time. It's fun to edit a podcast while you're recording it. You should try it sometime. Also, stream it live on YouTube. No pressure at all. Joel Polanco says, the Running Around, my song that's actually playing in the background right now, says, man, you have the power to change my day around at any time with this tune. Well done. Any chance of it and mixed together? Ooh, I don't know if I'll do it mixed together because I don't like going back and remixing a song. But who knows? Maybe. If you want to mix it yourself, you can go to homestudiocorner.com/practice and you can get all my multi-tracks for one low price. How's that for a deal? All right, that's it for me today. Thanks so much for being a part of Ask Joe. I appreciate you, and I'll see you around later.